When we have gathered before, it's been stated that stories contain 4 levels. The level in which there is a moral or a teaching. The level that contains the sacred numbers, archetypes, and symbols. The level that shows the main theme or character. And the stories all contain a secret. The first 3 we can know and understand with our mind. The 4th we can only experience. This is the last story in the week of sharing those stories with the theme of the death of love, the passage to the absence of illusion. All of us know of the great King Solomon. And we know that King Solomon knew the language of the animals. He could call the birds from the sky. He could direct the winds. He also wore a ring which had engraved on it the sacred name of God. King Solomon captured the king of the demons, Asmadi, chained him and kept him in a dungeon in his palace. But then one day, King Solomon had Asmadi brought into his presence. And he said to Asmadi, I have a need to know the secret of illusion. I am often asked, what is the difference between truth and illusion? The king of the demons, Asmadi, said, I cannot answer this question while I am in chains, and while you wear the ring with the sacred name of God engraved on it. Recognizing the logic of this, King Solomon demanded that Asmodi's chains be removed, and he took the ring from his finger and handed it to Asmodi. In the blink of an eye, Asmodi threw the ring, and it flew far, far away in the distance, falling into a great ocean. And in an instant afterwards, he grabbed King Solomon from his throne and threw him also out the window. King Solomon flew a great, great distance and landed in a country far, far away. When King Solomon awoke, he was thirsty, exhausted, and so he sought for a source to drink. He came to a pond, and to his very great surprise, when he saw his image in the pond before drinking, he was no longer a great king. He was a beggar. There was no shine to his face, no presence of power evident. He was bereft. He staggered into the nearest town, and at first he told the people that he was a king, but of course they laughed laughed at him. How could this be a king? This beggar, this peasant, wearing rags. So King Solomon had to beg for his sustenance. Day after day, he had to seek alms from the people of the town. But one day it so happened that the king of that place, the cook, was out buying supplies for the palace kitchen when King Solomon came to offer his assistance in carrying the goods that he had bought. They became friends, and the cook offered a position in the kitchen of the palace to King Solomon. So King Solomon became a servant, assisting the cook in preparing the meals for the monarch. But one day, King Solomon offered to cook a meal for the king. And when the king tasted King Solomon's food, he said it was the most delicious meal he had ever tasted. Who cooked it? And the chief cook had to tell him that it was the servant of the kitchen. So after this, the king demanded that King Solomon be his personal cook. But in this position, King Solomon had access to the main areas of the palace. And often the king's daughter, the princess of that realm, would be seen in the corridors and around. And of course, she came to see King Solomon. Immediately, she fell in love, and he with her. Their love was very great. And after a while, the princess went to her father, the king, and said that she would marry no one else but King Solomon. But of course, the king knew King Solomon as just a servant in his kitchen. He was angry because there had been many suitors seeking the hand of his daughter. He was so angry that he said, if they continued with their love, they would be banished, exiled, sent to the desert to die. But their love was great, so they were banished. They found themselves in a vast, vast desert, having with them only the clothes that they wore and the staff that King Solomon carried. But King Solomon, in his wisdom, used his staff as a divining rod. And with this divining rod, he was able to find water. And when a spring was flowing, there was the ability to begin a new life. They grew vegetables. They built an edifice. They were happy. Their love was so great. They had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. And after some time, King Solomon forgot that he had been a king. He was content with the love of his beloved wife and his children. But one day, standing in now his guardian. In the distance, he saw coming towards him a great wave. He grabbed his children and held the hand of his wife, but the wave engulfed them, tearing his children out of his arms, pulling his wife away so she disappeared in the darkness of the wave. When he awoke, all was gone. He found himself in chains. In this period when he's lost his consciousness, thieves, a band of thieves, had come along and captured him. He was taken off in his chains to be sold as a slave. But he did not care. He had lost everything. His love, the love of his life, had gone. He did not care what happened to him. He was sold to a blacksmith, and because of his stature, his strength, he was put to work using the bellows that fanned the flame of the furnace that the blacksmith used. He was a good worker. He was revered even by the blacksmith himself. The blacksmith's son had aspirations to be a jeweler, a goldsmith, and he was already quite adept at forming the delicate jewelry that could be sold. But then he learned that King Solomon himself was a master jeweler, and King Solomon taught this young man to hone his skills. The young man became the jeweler of the king of that place. But one day, King Solomon said to him, "Let me create a jewel for the king." And King Solomon forged in gold a dove set with the most precious of gems. When this was taken to the king knew that this was not the work of the young jeweler, and he asked, "Who made this?" And the young man admitted that it was the slave of his father, the blacksmith. So, of course, the king invited Solomon to his palace to become the palace jeweler. But whilst he was there, and before this time, the daughter of this king had been having a recurring dream, a dream in which she saw a man enter a cave in a cove that was the shape of a crescent moon. And there she saw the man find in the wall of that cave a jewel that glowed with a light that was beyond that which human eyes had she recognized that the man in her dream was King Solomon. So when she told her father, the king, of this, he called King Solomon to him, told him that he would want him to begin a quest of finding this gem. He was worried for his daughter. Her longing for that jewel was so great, she was becoming pale and thin, wasting away. King Solomon undertook this task without hesitation. He traveled for some years. Every place he went, he asked, "Is there a cave in the cove of a crescent shape?" But nowhere was it to be found, until he came to a place one day, and he heard a child saying to another child, "Let's go and play in the cove of the half moon." So he asked the boy, "Where is this cove?" And as soon as he was guided there, he saw the cave and knew that this was the place that he had been asked to seek out and find. He climbed to the cave with great difficulty, and he looked carefully around the cave where there might be found the jewel, but it was not to be seen. All he could find was a rock embedded in a crevice of the walls of the cave. So he removed this stone, and he dropped it and broke it, and there within that stone was the gem, the jewel that had been described, a jewel that glows with a light that is beyond human imagining. And he knew that he had found what he had been asked to seek. Carefully putting the gem into a pouch in his pocket, he lay down. He was greatly fatigued. He was asleep for some while, and when he awoke, he found that there was a great darkness outside the cave, and he realized that the tide was coming in, bringing great waves with it, engulfing the cave. He knew that if he remained there, he would die. So, taking the opportunity, when the next wave washed in, he rode that wave, which carried him out into the great ocean. But to his very great surprise, the ocean carried him back to the shores of the place, the kingdom, where the king had asked him to go on this quest. When the gem, the jewel, was given to the king and given to his daughter, the princess, she was overjoyed. And the king was so grateful. He asked King Solomon what it was that he wished. And of course, King Solomon asked that he be freed to find his kingdom. And he explained to that king of his story. The king very gratefully ordered that a boat be prepared so that he could embark on his quest to find his own kingdom. When the boat was set afloat, King Solomon needed to fish for his food. So, to his very great surprise, one day, in the course of his journey on the sea, he caught a golden fish. And when the fish was brought in to his vessel, it regurgitated his ring, the ring engraved with the sacred name of God. Placing this ring on his finger, he immediately found himself back in his own palace. The king of the demons, Asmadi, was standing there, and he said, "Oh, great king, we have been waiting an hour for you." Asmadi said to King Solomon, "Do you now know the secret of illusion?" The king of the demons, Asmodi, then flew off out of the window, never to be seen in that kingdom again. The four levels of story. And that level in which the secret is contained. This secret can only be experienced when we've traversed the passage that lies between the death of